All right. Hi, guys. So I just wanted to give you a brief video about um, the midterm and just kind of talk to you about it. So I'm actually giving you the entire weekend to do this. So the midterm is not due until Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. And I also wanted to kind of give you an outline, talk you through some things, just to make sure that you're all good. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Get rid of that. Okay, so this will be posted for you, but what I gave here is, let me make this big. It's a midterm outline for the article. The article's already posted, no degree and no way back to the middle. So this is kind of what we want. This is how the setup should be. So paragraph 1, it should be the hook. You know at this point that it's going to be a brief quote from the article. And then you're going to have a brief summary. So you want to summarize the article and tell me what it's about. And then you want to have a thesis statement. So those 3 things go into that first paragraph. Paragraph 2, you're just breaking down those 3 rhetorical appeals, right? So the first paragraph, and it can be whatever order you want. Like you can start with logic, you can start with emotion, you can start with credibility. It doesn't matter as long as you hit all 3 of those rhetorical appeals. So the first one is logic. And remember, for each of those topic sentences in each paragraph, you want at least 3 pieces of supporting detail, right? So if you're going to say, you know, the author uses logic to make a compelling argument, then you have to kind of pick 3 things where you see that happening. Paragraph 3, you're just going to move on to the next rhetorical appeal, which would be emotion, the way that this outline is set up. I'm going to have my 3 supporting details. Paragraph 4, I'm just going to hit credibility, right? Because I have to talk about all 3 of those rhetorical appeals. I'm looking at the text and I'm saying, okay, this is how this author's credibility is proven. This is why I believe this author. And then paragraph 5, which would be that conclusion. And then, you know, a conclusion always works the same way. You're going to restate your thesis if you feel like you need to. You can also restate some of the main points you hit in the body paragraphs. You can answer the question, you know, was this a convincing argument? Like, did you believe this at the end? Right? And then you can always end with a bang or a wrap up. And again, that can be a quote. So the outline is pretty self-explanatory. I want to spend a little bit of time on the thesis because I think you might need a little bit more direction. So here's the thesis statement, like my hint to you. So make sure that the thesis statement directly addresses the prompt, right? So that means, so the prompt is, you know, please write a rhetorical analysis about the following essay. That's the prompt. And then, so the next thing I recommend is that you can also incorporate the 3 rhetorical appeals you will address in your body paragraphs. So generally a thesis statement, it's got kind of like your position plus your 3 points. That's generally how, like the thesis statement formula for a simple thesis statement. So I give you some examples. Feel free to use these examples if you choose to. You can also make it prettier, do your own thing. It's fine either way. So this article uses the 3 rhetorical appeals of logic, emotion, and credibility to make a compelling argument. That's a clear thesis. It's saying, you know, 1, that I think this is a compelling argument. And then these are the 3 things that make it a compelling argument. I can also complicate it. And so say if I'm going to like, yeah, it makes a compelling argument, but, you know, and it does a good job with, you know, logic and emotion, but not so good with credibility. I can say that this article incorporates all 3 rhetorical appeals, but is at its strongest when it focuses on logic and emotions. So here are 2 sample thesis statements. Again, you can use them, you can come up with your own, but I just wanted to kind of give you a visual representation of those thesis statements. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the quote sandwich. So we've been using quotes, and but sometimes they become they read a little abrupt. And so the quote sandwich is kind of like how you incorporate a quote seamlessly into a body paragraph, because a quote is also, it can be and it should be for a text-based essay, a supporting detail. So the steps for a quote sandwich, you want to introduce it. So the quote always should be introduced, and you can also provide a brief sentence to set up the quote. And I'm going to give you an example in a second. You want to use and cite the quote, so you use the, you know, the the quote that you want, you put it in quotation marks, and then in the citation, because all of our stuff is online, you're just going to put the author's last name in parentheses. And then the last and most important step, particularly when you're using a quote in your body, is to explain the quote and connect it back to your argument, right? So here's a quote. So imagine that this is my, my body paragraph on how Egan, the author of this article, uses logic. And so here is my setup for the quote. Egan argues that the loss of factory and blue collar jobs makes it all the more important to have a college degree for economic stability. Here's a quote. It is not just that the American economy has shed 6 million manufacturing jobs over the last 3 decades. It is that the market value of those put out of work, people like Jeff Martinelli, has declined considerably over their lifetimes, opening a gap that has left millions of blue collar workers at the margins of the middle class. So I used the quote. Here is when I put it in parentheses. So here's my introducing of the quote, right? Here's where I use the quote. And generally you can use a quote as long as the quote isn't over 4 to 5 sentences. That's probably a lot, like 3 to 4 sentences, you're okay. And then here's where I cite the quote. And I just have his name in parentheses. And then I explain it. The data Egan provides in this quote makes a logical argument for a college degree in an uncertain and constantly changing economy. So you know that I'm talking about logic in terms of the rhetorical appeal because I just reference logic when I explain the quote. If I was talking about emotion and I wanted to pull a quote about emotion, I can just reference emotion when I explain the quote. So I hope that's helpful. And again, it's really nice in the beginning if you have these models in front of you. So if I go back up into the, my body paragraphs, because a quote can be a supporting detail. So maybe for supporting detail 3, I'm just going to pull a quote. Maybe in a quote makes your life a lot easier because you are using the text to develop your own argument. And so it shows, one, that you've read the text and that you understand it, but it means that you don't have to come up with as many ideas on your own. You can just kind of lean on the text. So a general rule of thumb is that you can use a quote per body paragraph. Anything more is going to be too much. So quote per body paragraph. And another general rule of thumb is that the quote can appear anywhere in the body paragraph. It can't be the topic sentence. So it can't be that you can't begin with the quote because I still need to see a clear topic sentence. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this and post this. And you should have this. If you have any questions or concerns over the weekend, just hit me up and text me and I'll get back to you. So I'm gonna end this. And good luck. I think you got it. You're fine. Good luck. And I'm